Asante. Thank you. Shukrani sana Larry. Kwanza nataka nichukue nafasi hii nimshukuru Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Muungano wa Tanzania kwa kutukaribisha. Namshukuru ndugu yangu Evariste Ndayishimiye na pia ndugu yangu Rais Mwinyi na wote ambao mliofika katika kikao hiki. Mtanisamehe Kiswahili changu si kizuri sana, lakini naona nitang'ang'ana tu. Kwanza nataka nishukuru Mheshimiwa Rais kwa kuchukua nafasi na kuungana nasi katika kongamano kubwa la Climate Change Summit ambayo ilikuwa Nairobi. Na wakati ulikuwa pale ulinipatia maagizo ya kwamba nije katika mkutano huu. Na nimeambiwa ya kwamba maagizo ni instructions. Kwa hivyo sikuwa na la ziada ila nifike. Nyinyi majirani zetu mkitaka kutuangamiza mnasema tuongee Kiswahili. Na ndio hapo tunapata matatizo. Lakini nimesikiza taarifa yako Mheshimiwa Rais kwa makini sana na kufuatilia yale mmetueleza. Na pale pia nikisikiza nikapata msamiati wa Kiswahili katikati pale. Kwanza nikapata kujua ya kwamba tunaweza kuchochea kilimo biashara. Kule kwetu uchochezi sana ni wanasiasa wanafanya uchochezi. Lakini nimeona kumbe uchochezi pia uko na positive ya kwamba unaweza kuchochea kitu kizuri na ikaendelea. Pale pia nimepata kuelewa kwamba kuna mabadiliko ya hewa. Nilikuwa nafikiri ni mabadiliko ya mazingira. So hapo nimepata kuelewa, sasa nitaifuatilia vizuri. Kwa sababu wakati mmoja nilisema mabadiliko ya mazingara. Sasa jamaa mmoja kutoka Tanzania akaniambia mazingara ni mambo mengine. Yanakaribiana na uchawi sijui na kuelekea upande hiyo. Lakini pia nikasikia umetueleza na nakubaliana na wewe 100%. Kwa muda mrefu tumekuwa walalamikaji. Nimesikia hapo. Lakini niko na malalamiko kidogo. Wacha niseme kwamba pia nimesikia kwa taarifa yako umerudia azimio. Hao watu walikuwa na azimio. Sasa nikapata kidogo wasiwasi kwa sababu kule kwetu azimio ni mambo mengine. Azimio ni chama ya upinzani iko na fujo kweli. Lakini hata hivyo nimeelewa tena kwamba azimio kumbe yanaweza kuwa ni mambo mazuri ya makubaliano. Alafu mwisho wacha nimsaidie, Kiswahili changu ni bora kuliko ya Larry, mtu wa kutoka kijiji yangu huko nyumbani. amesema hapo ya kwamba mnatuzungumzia na Kiingereza ambayo sio kizuri, na sisi tunaongelesha Kiswahili ambazo sio kizuri. Vile alikuwa anataka kusema ni kwamba mnatuzungumzia na Kiswahili sanifu, na sisi tunawazungumza. Happy to participate in this very important forum around the most important subject of our time, about food. In fact, I will tell you that the last campaigns in Kenya were centered around food, the cost of food. The cost of living is in proper context because it speaks to a very important subject, not just globally, not just regionally, even in Kenya, it's a very important subject. And it is an important subject because without many things, you can live without technology, you can fail to have airtime and many other things. But food is something very emotive, and therefore it is important as leaders working with all the other stakeholders to think, to plan, and to do everything possible to make sure we get it right. And this forum, therefore, brings in context the importance of the subject around food and food systems. And I want to just say two things, because Mama Samia has spoken for almost all of us, and my colleagues also have spoken to the issues in the best way possible. Let me just say two things. There are two things that are important from where I sit. Number one is how do we increase productivity? And number two, how do we bring youth into the equation? I think those two issues, encapsulates what I think should inform our thinking going forward. About productivity, let me say three things about productivity. How do we increase our productivity? How do we assist our farmers to produce more and to produce much more efficiently? Number one, fertilizer and seed. The provision of fertilizer and seed is very important. It must be accessible, it must be affordable, and it must be available. What we did in Kenya this year is that we registered 5 million farmers, and we distributed fertilizer online so that we eliminate brokers, we eliminate conmen, we eliminate people, middlemen, who normally should change farmers, and farmers end up with fertilizer that is too expensive. And because of what we did, we reduced the cost of fertilizer from about $50 a ton to less than $20 a ton. You will speak with your colleagues in Kenya across, and they will tell you that's what we did. And because of that, we increased our fertilizer uptake in just the last season alone. And I have a witness here because Yara, who spoke earlier, Yara International, were amongst our 4 suppliers who supplied the fertilizer to us. That's number one. And let me tell you the results. Last year, we projected to harvest 44 million bags. Because of the intervention around seed and fertilizer, our projection this year is that we will move from 44 million to 61 million bags of maize alone. That is what the correct seed, the correct fertilizer, and affordable fertilizer and accessible fertilizer and seed will do to our farming. Because we just need to be practical about how we want to take this forward. And let me say something about the correct fertilizer. You know, we've been using DAP in Kenya for a long time. This year, I made a policy decision that we are not going to allow any importation of DAP into Kenya. And that is what we did. So we imported the fertilizer which our scientists assessed our soils and told us, these are the nutrients that are lacking in your soil, these are the correct nutrients. We did formulation of fertilizer that we are using for our farmers. Our farmers made noise, but I am telling you today, they are the happiest people. They are the ones who are telling us, you gave us the right fertilizer. That's number one. Number two is to reduce post-harvest losses. We lose between 30 and 35, maybe sometimes even 40% of what we produce because of poor storage, lack of transport, lack of infrastructure for drying, and many other things. So what are we doing? We're doing three things. Number one, to reduce the loss of milk, we are distributing 650 milk coolers around Kenya to make sure that our farmers can get to a milk cooler within half an hour of them milking, so that we can improve the quality of our milk and we can reduce losses from milk because of milk going to waste, number one. Number two, we're investing close to $30 million to make sure that our farmers have dryers, especially in the grain areas. And number three, we are doing market infrastructure. We're building around 400 markets around Kenya, and we are building another 50 county aggregation and industrial parks where you have storage, including cold rooms, and where you can add value to some of your produce so that we not only save on post-harvest losses because of poor storage or lack of cold room, but we also add value and take it forward. Again, that increases our productivity and our production because we eliminate post-harvest losses. And finally, and I'm saying this just so that I don't take a lot of your time. We are working on how, and I really liked what President Suluhu said, that government is careful to make sure that farmers have affordable financing or accessible, affordable credit. The same way, Mama Suluhu, you told us in your statement that Tanzania is making sure that farmers have access to credit at below 10%. In fact, you told us 9%. That is exactly what we are doing in Kenya. In fact, we are adding 10 billion shillings to Agricultural Finance Corporation to make sure that farmers have seasonal credit that they can use to expand their productivity. And finally, and this is maybe unique to Kenya, because it's just good to tell you as our neighbors, many of you don't know that 85% of Kenya is arid and semi-arid. So when my sister from UAE was speaking, I was paying very keen attention, because what she is saying is partly what we are experiencing. And that is why in Kenya, we are working with Afri-Exim Bank, we are working with the World Bank and other partners to build 100 mega dams 1,000 microdams for water storage, because the future rains are going to be very unpredictable. And sometimes we confuse rain for water. We need water to grow food. We don't need rain. Let me say that again. I said we need water to grow food. It is not rain we are looking for. So sometimes we get confused and wait for the rain instead of looking for the water. So I think that is as far as that goes. Let me finally talk about the young people. There is no future in agriculture unless we bring the young people on board. The average age of a farmer in Kenya is about 60 years. So, and when I became Minister for Agriculture, and I had a discussion with my peers then, the logo for the Ministry of Agriculture at that time was an old woman with ile jembe, the hoe, ile jembe. That was the logo of the Ministry of Agriculture. Explain to me how young people are going to have a different perception as a farmer if the logo of the Ministry of Agriculture is an old woman na jembe ameweka hapa kwa mgongo. That is how we changed. Tukabadilisha ile logo, tukaweka hapo greenhouse na irrigation infrastructure. Just, we need to create a new narrative around agriculture for us to bring young people on board. And let me say two things that I think of my head is, number one, technology. Technology will bring the young people into agriculture. That is why my dear sister from UAE said a young person can be an agroeconomist or agrotechnologist, but not a farmer. But it's the same thing, right? So, technology. How have we brought technology into the agricultural equation? Number one, I told you we registered all our farmers and we used technology to distribute our fertilizer, number one. Number two, today we are using e-Citizen, a government platform, digital platform, to disseminate agricultural extension service. So, because you can only do the correct farming if you have the correct information. And number three, we are using technology also for purposes of meteorology and early warning. I find many farmers in rural Kenya today, in fact, wanatumia neno la Kiswahili, yule mtu wa magician, ule wa simu, anasema itanyesha next week. That is how technology is helping inform farmers to plan themselves how to take this forward. And finally, mechanization is going to recruit young people into agriculture. I see it with my own children. Unless you mechanize, it becomes very difficult for young people to be recruited into that space. When you mechanize, they easily can identify with agriculture. So, and if I talk about Kenya, 45% of our agriculture is mechanized. We still have a whole 55% mechanization to do. And that is scope that we can use to recruit the young people of our continent into the agriculture space. Let me conclude by saying one final thing. The billionaires of the future, according to Africa Development Bank, will not be people in Google and all the other spaces. They will be people in agriculture. So if you want to be a rich man in future, you have to begin to go to the right corner. Start being a farmer. And I am telling you from experience because I am one of them. So mujipange hapo kwa kilimo kama unatafuta pesa huko mbele. Hapo kwa kilimo ndio mabilionea watakuwa tukisonga mbele. Na kwa sababu hapo kwa kilimo ndio kutakuwa na mabilionea, pia mjue vile Mama Samia alivyosema, I think they say thuluthi mbili, 65% ya ardhi ya kilimo, arable and uncultivated land, iko katika bara letu la Afrika.